Question in the wake of last Wednesday's assault on the U.S. Capitol is why weren't rioters stopped? Images flooded the internet last week of police officers badly outnumbered as domestic terrorists stormed one of the country's most important democratic symbols. But the inaction of some officers has been flagged as suspect. Now, as law enforcement agencies nationwide face threats of more violence, a wave of suspensions and terminations is raising questions about elements within the country's public safety departments. A new report from the Washington Post says police departments across the country are investigating their own officers for their proximity to or alleged involvement in the gathering that ultimately culminated in the Capitol Hill riot. Kim Bellware is a Washington Post reporter and the author of that report, and she joins me now. Kim, thanks very much for being with us. So the right to free speech is a founding principle of our country. Can you explain more about how a police officer's expression of political views might impact their employment in this situation?
Well, most police departments across the U.S., they do have the ability to exercise their right to free speech. Most departments do have policies that prohibit officers from making any kind of political speech or demonstration while in uniform, while they're out of uniform, as long as they're not violating any departmental guidelines around behavior, they're usually fine. But this incident on Wednesday is raising a lot of questions because there's definitely kind of a line between who was attending a rally and who was participating in this riot at the Capitol. And that's something that departments are now having to wade through because they're going to be looking at if a crime was committed by any officers, but also were there any non-criminal actions that might have violated departmental guidelines.
Right, and one concern raised in your article is that disciplining officers for being present at a violent riot could have unintended consequences that could harm vulnerable communities. Can you explain that?
Yeah, this is something that some legal experts and other First Amendment experts were paying attention to because, as you had just mentioned and had asked, police officers do have a right to free expression. And the argument that was raised is that if we start policing or if departments start cracking down on what demonstrations are okay, what is to say that that is not going to then come up next summer if there is a Black Lives Matter protest, if there is some kind of demonstration for whatever cause. So the concern is that being too broad about what is punishable behavior could ultimately widen the scope of that will ultimately limit speech for everybody else.
Well, how could these investigations impact the police departments themselves? Is there a sense they could affect morale or effectiveness?
There's definitely a question of morale, and with these departments, there's so many questions about who is involved. In one case, it was the police chief, it was leadership that was involved. So there are all these different considerations that departments are having to make because if some chiefs, if they are going really hard in punishing or otherwise sanctioning their officers, even for showing support. Maybe they didn't even participate. This is something we've seen out of Oakland County in California. They've warned that even officers who like things on social media that express support for the insurrection, that could run afoul of guidelines. That has the possibility of diminishing morale, but there's also for the public wants to know that they can have confidence in their police force, and they want to know that the police is supportive of the rule of law. So there's a lot of things that departments are going to have to contend with, from morale to freedom of speech for their employees.
Brittany, here's how I know that law enforcement can respond differently. I watched what happened in Lafayette Square when the president and members of his cabinet staff and family wanted to go across the street, hold a Bible aloft, and have a photo op in front of a burned-out church basement. So I'll ask you the question this way. How do you think police would have responded differently had this been a Black Lives Matter protest?
I don't have to think, I know. I remember in 2014 when the police declared it illegal to stand still with their 5-second rule. So we literally walked in circles. We certainly would never have been allowed to storm a federal building. I was one of many people who was a defendant on a case that has now been thrown out, but I was accused of inciting a riot in Baton Rouge during the peaceful protest after the killing of Alton Sterling. I was accused of inciting a riot that I did not incite because it wasn't a riot. And yet we've got people standing tonight on the floor of the U.S. Capitol who in fact incited a riot, an insurrection, and a violent mob, and they are taking the microphone as if nothing has occurred. This is due to the complicity of elected officials, of appointed officials, of media platforms, certainly of law enforcement that, to be clear, did not just stand by while these things happened and provided, as was said, an unprofessional response. We have video of several law enforcement officers actually encouraging, participating, and permitting these activities, opening barricades, taking selfies with these insurrectionists. We have to be very, very precise here about exactly what happened. It wasn't just that the police stood by and did nothing, is that some of them actually encouraged and participated in activity that was a direct violation of the Constitution and was a clear example of domestic terrorism. You know, Brian, I think we use words a lot and we don't always make sure that we're clear about precisely what they mean. This is the literal example of white supremacy. What does white supremacy mean? It means that white people believe that they have dominion over everybody and dominion over everything, that they are in fact supreme. So we saw a group of white people, of white supremacists here, thinking that they own a country that they colonized, and therefore they can do whatever they want with it. They think they can storm any building in that country because they believe they own it. They think that they can erect a noose on the side of a building that was built by enslaved Africans in America because they think they have full permission to do so, and did so on camera because they knew the police would do nothing about it. But they do not own this country. They do not own democracy. They don't own us. They are tragically confused, and we will not be intimidated despite the fact that the police did not hold the line today.
Police are squabbling with protesters. Oh, there we go.
Don't shoot! Hands up! Don't shoot! Hands up! Don't shoot! Hands up! Don't shoot! Take that house! Take it now!
They seem like they're working on it together.
Don't shoot!
Photo on video.
Again, if you have kids in the room, please mute the TV. I'm going to show you a video. It's 2 minutes long. It is what happened to one of our CNN crews when the mob realized that they were members of the media. There's very graphic language in this video, but you need to watch it.
Get out of here, motherfuckers!
Let's go. Let's go. We gotta go. We gotta go. Let's go.
Come on. Go. Get the fuck out! Don't you touch me! You don't like it now, do you? Fuck you! Who are you with?
There's more of us than you. There's more of us than you.
Do something! Shoot something!
Destroy you right now.
We can have fucking pussy! Hey, this guy's with the media! This guy's with the media!
to get through them, you're going to have to come through me. That is not us. You get the fuck out of here before you get hurt. This is not us. This is not us. This is why we're different.
A moment of great dishonor and shame for our nation. A sickening and heartbreaking sight. A national tragedy. An unprecedented assault on our capital, our Constitution, and our country. In pointed statements, all four former presidents from both sides of the aisle coming together to condemn Wednesday's acts of violence. George W. Bush, the last Republican president, said he watched the scenes of mayhem unfold in disbelief and dismay, adding, "This is how election results are disputed in a banana republic, not our democratic republic." Calling out President Trump, Barack Obama said the attacks on the U.S. Capitol were incited by a sitting president who has continued to baselessly lie about the outcome of a lawful election, adding, "We'd be kidding ourselves if we treated it as a total surprise." Fellow Democrat Bill Clinton writing, "The assault was fueled by more than 4 years of poison politics, spreading deliberate misinformation, sowing distrust in our system, and pitting Americans against one another. The match was lit by Donald Trump and his most ardent enablers." Jimmy Carter also reacting to the riots, saying, "Having observed elections in troubled democracies worldwide, I know that we the people can unite to walk back from this precipice, to peacefully uphold the laws of our nation. And we must." All of the former leaders also calling for a peaceful path forward. Obama urging Republican leaders to take the first steps towards extinguishing the flames and choose America. Bush calling on all Americans to support the rule of law, saying our country is more important than the politics of the moment. Clinton sharing a message of hope for the nation, writing, "I have always believed that America is made up of good, decent people. I still do. If that's who we really are, we must reject today's violence, turn the page, and move forward together." The former presidents will be at the inauguration on January 20th. With the exception of the Carters, the couple, both in their 90s, have wished Joe Biden and Kamala Harris success.